For all its beauty and splendor, the wilderness can be a cruel teacher. Traveling the world is one of the most beautiful things a person can do. It opens your eyes. It humbles you. You see mountains older than empires, oceans that stretch beyond reason, and faces that remind you the world is vast and worth knowing. The road teaches things no classroom can. It shapes you, breaks you, rebuilds you. But adventure is not owed to you, and nature does not care about your bucket list, because out there, wonder and danger often coexist, and if you mistake one for the other, you may not come back. Let's venture back to the merciless mountains where survival is earned, not given. This is outdoor disasters. For Juliana Marins, her mountain hike would be disastrous. Juliana Marins, 26, was born in Niterói across the bay from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. She was a publicist by trade, a dancer by heart, and restless in spirit. Not in a way that troubled, but in a way that moves people forward. She had saved, she had planned, she had dreamed. And in March 2025, she boarded a flight to Asia, the trip of a lifetime, the kind of journey that lives on in phone screens, scrapbooks, and memories long after the skin forgets the sun. She moved through islands and borders, Thailand, Vietnam, the Philippines. Her eyes always wide, her shoulders never hunched. She was 26 and she was alone but not lonely, not in the way that mattered. She had set out with a backpack, and that was enough. The world was large and her body was young, and there was still time. In every photo she smiled, not because she had to, but because she meant it. Because she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Alive, hungry, full of the quiet hope that the world might be good and beautiful and wide. By June, she had made her way to Indonesia, to Lombok, a smaller island not far from Bali. Less crowded, wilder. There was a mountain there, Rinjani. You could see it from the coast. It stood tall over the forests and the towns. An old volcano, still breathing in its sleep, 12,000 feet tall. It was the second highest volcano in all of Indonesia. They said the views from the summit could take your breath away. They also said the climb was brutal. Unforgiving trails, sheer drops, and weather that turned in seconds. But that didn't stop her. She craved something more than comfort. She wanted a test, a memory forged in sweat and sky. She told herself this was the kind of journey you only get once, the kind that changes you. She came looking for beauty and challenge. She would find both. But what she didn't know, what no one could have told her, was that this trip would turn into a nightmare. And by the time she realized it, there'd be no way back down. Mount Rinjani watches over the island of Lombok in Indonesia. At 3,726 meters or 12,200 feet, it's the second highest volcano in the country and easily one of the most breathtaking. But like many things that draw you in with beauty, it comes with teeth. The climb starts in lush jungle. Birds call from the trees, monkeys leap from branch to branch, and the air is thick with the scent of wet earth and moss. It's humid, it's alive, and it's only the beginning. The trail winds upward through rainforest, then grasslands, then brittle volcanic rock. Every few thousand feet the landscape changes. It's like hiking through the layers of the Earth's skin. And then you see it, Sagara Anak, the crater lake, blue like melted sapphire sitting inside the mouth of the volcano. It seems impossible, a lake inside a mountain that was born from fire. Steam rises from hot springs near the water's edge, and in the center of the lake stands a smaller cone, Barujari, the child of Rinjani, still active, still spitting smoke into the sky on restless days. But don't be fooled by the peace. Rinjani is not a mountain to be taken lightly. The weather turns quick. Clear skies can choke with cloud in minutes, and with that comes cold wind and blinding rain. The final push to the summit is the worst. It's all loose volcanic scree, every step forward a half slide back. You climb in darkness, the wind biting, the air thinning, legs burning with each stride. Some turn back, Some don't make it at all. Altitude sickness is real here. So is exhaustion. So is the danger of losing your footing on a narrow ridge at dawn, when the light finally breaks and reveals the sky turning blood orange above a world that feels impossibly far below. And yet, that view from the summit, watching the sun rise over the island with the clouds swirling below your feet, it's the kind of thing that carves itself into your memory forever. Mount Rinjani is beautiful, hauntingly so. But for those who don't come prepared, who underestimate the slopes or ignore the signs, Rinjani doesn't forgive. And when that perilous moment comes, it takes without mercy. On June 20th, 2025, Juliana signed on with a local trekking company, a group of 6 foreigners, 1 guide. They were going to the summit, a 2-day climb. They'd sleep high and walk in the dark, reach the peak before the sun breaks the horizon. That was the plan. That night, the winds moved over the mountain like a slow, steady breath. The crater slept below, full of mist and ancient waters of Segara Anak. At 2 a.m., they set off from camp. The trail was narrow and steep, winding its way up through the darkness. The air was cold, dry, and thin. Boots moved over volcanic dust that shifted with every step. Somewhere near the rim, Juliana began to fall behind the group. Her breath came harder. The altitude, maybe, or the lack of sleep, or the weight of something else she didn't say aloud. She told the guide she needed to rest. That was what she said, or what he remembered her saying. He told her to sit, to catch her breath. Maybe he meant to come back. Maybe he thought she would follow. He kept going. So did the others. And so she sat, alone, high above the lake, her flashlight dimmed in the fog, her breath visible in the cold. No one knows for certain whether she was trying to make her way back down or was desperately pushing forward to catch up with her group. Maybe, after a long rest, she thought she had enough strength to continue. Maybe the summit still called to her, but at some point, she took that next step, and then she slipped. The only thing she heard was the crunch of stone underfoot and bones breaking, the sudden rush of air past her ears, and then silence. She vanished over the edge of the crater rim, swallowed by the mountain. The slope wasn't sheer, but it was steeper than it seemed. She slid, rolled, and tumbled through loose ash, broken lava rock, and coarse sand, approximately 300 meters or 1,000 feet down. The fall was violent, brutal, fast. Her limbs flailed, bones colliding with rock, jacket torn, screams lost to the wind. She bounced, slid, vanished, becoming smaller with each second. And then, at some point, the mountain stopped her, not with mercy, with finality. Shockingly, Juliana survived the fall. She hit a ledge. She didn't break open, not at first. She sat upright in the gravel. Her arms moved, her head turned. Somewhere up above, another hiker heard her voice, weak but clear. "Help! Help me!" she cried out. Other hikers yelled down to her, reassuring her that help will come. And help came. The guide ran back, saw the beam of her flashlight far below. He shouted her name. She shouted back. There were no trees to catch her, no roots to hold her, just the barren slope of an ancient caldera, the color of bone and ash. By 7 a.m., the sun rose over Mount Rinjani and Juliana Marins was still alive. Word traveled fast. The other hikers sent word down the mountain. The guide made radio contact. Indonesia's National Rescue Service, Basarnas, was alerted. Park rangers began hiking in with ropes and radio sets and the same optimism that comes with duty. That day, they sent drones to find her, and they did. A small figure in red and gray, slumped but alive on the dusty slope. She raised an arm, a leg moved. The rescue crews watched from their screens and knew she was still in her body, still holding on. But they couldn't reach her. The ropes they brought were too short. The descent was too steep. The sun grew hot. The fog returned by afternoon, thick and low, clinging to the rocks like damp cotton. Visibility dropped to nothing. They bivouacked for the night. Just above her, close but not close enough, She was still alive at sunset. The second day began before the sun. The rescuers tried to rappel in again. This time they brought a longer rope. They drilled bolts into the cliff, tied in teams, moved slowly. The dust gave beneath their boots. The walls crumbled at touch. She had slipped again, or the slope had moved beneath her. That was the mountain's way. You didn't have to do anything wrong. Sometimes it just gave way. Now she was farther down, about 600 meters from the rim. She was barely visible now, even from the air. The drone saw her again that day, but she wasn't moving. The rescuers shouted her name. No answer. The footage was still, just a figure, a body maybe, a shape. They didn't know if she was unconscious or dead or just past speech. The crater swallowed sound. Still, they climbed. By the third day, the families back in Brazil were losing hope. Her sister posted online. "She's there. She's alive. We need more help." The people listened. Brazil watched. It made the news. A girl from Niterói stranded on a volcano on the other side of the world. Alive, maybe. Alone. Brazil's president, Lula, got involved. He called the embassy in Jakarta, asked what had been done. But there was only so much that could be done from an ocean and a continent away. The rescuers were still climbing. They had no helicopter. The wind was too high, the fog too thick. Even if they could drop a line, it wouldn't hold. The weather closed in like a hand. With every passing hour, her chances of survival faded. Juliana was trapped in a place no rescue could easily reach, a remote, treacherous stretch of the volcano. What began as the adventure of a lifetime had unraveled into a desperate battle between life and death, and the mountain wasn't letting go. It clawed at every rescue attempt, swallowed signals, and shrouded her fate in silence. Each minute that passed brought more questions, fewer answers. And somewhere down in that caldera she was still waiting, or worse. On the fourth day, someone finally reached her. Rescuers had spent hours ascending through loose scree and jagged lava stone. They were exhausted, but they pressed on, because someone had to. When one of the rescuers found her, she was lying motionless in the ravine, curled slightly on her side as if she had tried to sleep. Her skin had gone pale. Her lips were blue. Her eyes were shut gently, like she might still be dreaming. He said her name. No response. He knelt in the dust beside her, laid a shaking hand near her mouth, listened for breath, pressed 2 fingers to her neck. No rise, no rhythm, no warmth. She was gone. There was no pulse, no breath, no warmth. Just stillness and stone. After that, it was no longer a rescue. It was recovery, and recovery on Rinjani was no simple thing. The ravine was steep and cruel. Volcanic rock tore at boots, at hands, at knees. The men moved slowly. Ropes were fixed, knots checked twice. They wrapped her in the black body bag, silent and careful, and began the long pull upward, inch by inch. They didn't speak. There was nothing to say. By early afternoon on the 25th of June, they had her back at the crater rim, the anchor point. It had taken hours. Her weight, the slope, the mountain's resistance. Everything fought them. They laid her on a stretcher. 4 men took the corners. Then came the descent. The trail was narrow and mean. Loose earth, sharp switchbacks. The kind of path that didn't care if you stumbled. They carried her down anyway, step by step, shoulders burning. No helicopter could come. The weather wouldn't allow it. The clouds hung too low, the wind too hard. So they walked. At 8:40 that night, they reached Sembalun Base Camp, the mountain behind them, darkness all around. Juliana's body was then transferred by road to Bhayangkara Police Hospital in the city of Mataram, Lombok, arriving in the early hours of June 26th. Rinjani had taken her. Maybe she died in the night. Maybe she held on until morning. Maybe she had drifted off, finally in the arms of exhaustion. Regardless, the ravine was too deep, the night too cold, the mountain indifferent to mercy. Juliana Marins was officially declared dead on June 24, 2025, when the rescue team finally reached her in the ravine. Word traveled quickly. That same day, Her family shared the news with the world through the Instagram page that had been posting desperate updates throughout the search. "With great sadness, we inform you that she didn't survive," the message read. They thanked the thousands who had sent prayers and words of support, clinging to hope as long as they could. In Indonesia, the response was swift. The Ministry of Environment and Forestry, which oversees the national parks, issued an official statement 2 days later, offering condolences to Juliana's family. As a mark of respect and to allow the recovery to continue without risk, the government closed all hiking routes on Mount Rinjani indefinitely. "We express our highest appreciation for the dedication of all teams involved in this humanitarian mission," said the Rinjani Park office. Juliana's death was mourned publicly, and the rescue workers were praised for their tireless efforts on unforgiving ground. An autopsy later confirmed what many feared. Juliana had died from blunt force trauma. The fall had broken bones and caused massive internal injuries. There were no signs of starvation or prolonged hypothermia. Authorities concluded she likely died quickly after the fall, despite early hopes that she might have survived for hours or even days, waiting for help. Her family, still grappling with the uncertainty, requested a second autopsy after her body was returned to Brazil. They wanted answers, something to hold on to, a timeline, a truth. The drone footage seen around the world showed her sitting upright, likely hours after her fall. Back in Brazil, her disappearance had sparked a firestorm. News of Juliana's ordeal dominated headlines, lighting up screens and front pages across the country. Social media exploded. Her sister's Instagram page, launched to spread awareness and organize rescue efforts, swelled to over 1.6 million followers in just a few days. People rallied for Juliana. They posted her photo, begged officials to act faster, and demanded more help. It wasn't just a story, it became a movement. The Brazilian government responded. The embassy worked behind the scenes. And when the rescue was over, when Juliana's body was finally coming home, President Lula da Silva picked up the phone himself. He called Juliana's father, offered his condolences, promised support, and then he did something else. He overturned a decades-old policy that barred government funds from being used to repatriate the remains of citizens abroad. An exception was made for Juliana. A new decree was issued, but the Marins family didn't wait. They accepted help from the city government of Niterói, which had offered to cover the costs immediately. They didn't want delays. They just wanted her home. In early July, Juliana's body arrived in Brazil. The plane touched down in São Paulo, and from there, she was brought back to her home state, back to the land she left behind when she followed a dream to the far side of the world. What she found on that mountain had cost her everything. Back in Lombok, while Juliana's body was being flown home, the question still hung heavy in the air. The local police had opened an investigation into the circumstances of her death, how a routine trek turned into tragedy, and whether negligence had played a role. On July 1, 2025, the guide Ali Mustafa gave his statement to the authorities. He denied any wrongdoing. He told police, and later repeated to a Brazilian journalist, that Juliana had been exhausted and he'd advised her to rest. He claimed he had only walked a short distance ahead on the trail, just a few minutes, before realizing she was no longer behind him. When he turned back, he said he saw the flicker of her flashlight far below in the ravine. He said he heard her calling for help, but Juliana's family did not believe him. Her father, Manuel Marins, publicly accused both the guide and the trekking company of gross negligence. According to him, Mustafa had admitted, at least privately, to leaving Juliana alone for longer than just a few minutes, maybe to smoke, maybe out of distraction, but long enough, too long. Manuel believed that if the guide had simply stayed with her, if he had done the one thing he was paid to do, his daughter might still be alive. If the guide had stayed by her side, her ending could have been different, he proclaimed. He also criticized the initial response from park authorities, calling it slow and disorganized. Time had been lost, and in the mountains, time is life. Indonesian officials confirmed the inquiry was active. The question they were now trying to answer was whether Juliana's death was a terrible accident or something worse, something preventable. As of early July, no one had been charged, but the case wasn't closed. The Brazilian embassy was watching closely. So was the public. And behind every statement, every official word, was the echo of what might have been. Juliana Marins' tragic death sent shockwaves through both Brazil and Indonesia, capturing international attention and sparking public outcry. Social media overflowed with messages of hope and heartbreak. A hashtag calling for urgency in the rescue went viral, while politicians demanded an investigation into what many saw as a delayed and disorganized response. Juliana's sister Mariana spoke for millions when she wrote, "Now we will seek justice for her, because that's what she deserves." But the tragedy also stirred deep compassion. Brazilian football star Alexandre Pato quietly offered to cover the cost of repatriating Juliana's body. "It's the least I could do," he said. Juliana's family, in their grief, chose grace. They publicly thanked the Indonesian rescuers and volunteers who risked everything to bring her back. "We know the conditions were harsh and the risks were great," they wrote. "Thanks to your courage, we were able to say goodbye." Still, there was sorrow in the space between thank you and too late. The family later added, "If you had arrived earlier, perhaps the outcome could have been different." Juliana's death became more than a personal tragedy. It raised hard questions about safety, responsibility, and the fragile line between wonder and danger. Both Brazil and Indonesia have since vowed to review emergency protocols and improve cooperation in future crises. At her funeral in Brazil, condolences poured in from around the world. President Lula personally reaffirmed his support for the Marins family and for the pursuit of answers. Juliana Marins set out to chase something beautiful, not just landscapes or photographs, but the kind of beauty that lives in motion. The wind on your face in a place you've never been, the sound of a new language, the thrill of being unknown and unafraid. She was vibrant, fiercely alive. She danced, she laughed, she gave warmth freely. Her family adored her. On her Instagram, people saw a girl unafraid to wander. Her smile was open, her words full of wonder. Her death was not quiet. It echoed across mountains, across oceans, across hearts. Juliana's story ended in sorrow, but in that sorrow, something ignited, a fire of reckoning, of awareness, of change. Governments looked closer. Rescuers are committing to train harder. Travelers paid attention. The system moved, because one girl slipped into a ravine, and the world refused to let her vanish without meaning. She didn't get to finish her journey, but she may help others finish theirs. And that, in the face of everything, is something beautiful. For every postcard view, there's a hidden edge. For every trail, a place where the ground gives way beneath your feet. The same wilderness that offers peace and wonder will turn violent without warning. A shift in weather, a wrong turn, one bad decision. That's all it takes. When you chase wild places unprepared, without the right gear, the right knowledge, you're rolling the dice with your life. And the wilderness doesn't play fair. Your itinerary, your optimism, or your Instagram post, it doesn't care who you are and what your plans are. It's a brutal teacher, and the lessons are harsh. And failing the class means death. The world is worth seeing. Go see it. Be bold. Go climb the peaks, wade into the rivers, walk the foreign roads, make memories, burn them into your bones. That's living. But know this, beauty isn't a safety net. Nature doesn't hand out warnings in neat little signs. If you go too far past your limits, if you ignore the voice in your head that says turn back, then you've traded wonder for recklessness. And there's a fine line between courage and foolishness. Adventure demands your best. If you're not ready, physically, mentally, and with the right tools, you're asking for disaster. So go out into the world. Chase it with everything you've got. But know when to stop. Know when to turn around. Because those who don't become cautionary tales on outdoor disasters. If you've made it this far, please consider clicking those subscribe and like buttons. Want more outdoor disasters content? Check out these videos I believe you'll enjoy. Thank you for watching.